Welcome back to ChatChit, another gather round in the books, and we've seen some good games at the 3 grounds in South Australia. Aiden, what were your thoughts of gather round this year?
I enjoyed it this year. I know there was there were broke records for the amount of people down there. We had quite a few good games towards the end of the round. I know the Hawthorn game just finished. Devastated that they couldn't get over the line at the end.
90% of Australia devastated about the result of that game.
Yeah, it feels like the commentators know it as well, that Australia lost when Hawthorn couldn't get over the line.
Commentators only got excited when Hawthorn got in the game.
It's true, besides BT.
Yeah. True.
He was a little bit devastated. But we'll jump straight into our top 5 players for the round. This was a lot easier to make than last week, but there were a lot of candidates that we had for the top 5.
A lot of stand-up performances.
I know you struggled with this. You had about 9 or 10 guys that could have been in your top 5.
Let's both go with our honourable mentions to start.
Yeah, so my honourable mention is Marcus Bontempelli.
Same here.
There's a pretty clear shoe-in, another Bulldogs midfielder, and I just didn't think we could have a second Bulldogs midfielder in a losing side. It just couldn't happen.
Yeah, he was unreal though, and the stats are crazy. Best player in the comp. Gets the honourable mention. A lot of standout performances.
I wouldn't say best player in the comp. But yeah, we'll talk about it later in my pyramid. But I'll jump straight into my number 5. I had Toby Green. Toby's back. Toby kicked 5 goals, and you know what it is? It's when he has a big game, I feel like it helps the rest of his forward line massively. So Hogan kicked 4, Brown kicked 3, because I feel like you really have to take notice of him. Whereas in the past couple of weeks, he's been a lot quieter than what we usually expect from Toby Green, and it puts a lot more pressure on the rest of his forward line and a lot less pressure on the opposition back line. And I feel like when he has a game, and suddenly you have to worry about Toby Green, arguably one of the best small forward in the competition when he's on, just creates a lot of freedom for the other forwards. And he had a massive game today, so he's my number 5.
Yeah, he's pretty much the only player at GWS that hasn't had a huge game so far this year, out of all their stars. So
True.
He's now shown that he's come to the party as well, and GWS look super, super strong. So number 5, I had Christian Petrarca.
Okay.
He's just unreal.
He is a good player.
Yeah, it just doesn't really matter what stats he puts up. Whenever he's near the football, he's just so he's got to be the hardest guy to tackle in the league, and he's so effective with his disposal, and he's just so punishing.
You know what it is?
It's just unreal watching him play.
There are some players that take on the tough kick, that take on that tough hand pass, and they miss. But we commend them for being able to take it on, taking the risk. He takes it on and it sticks. More often than not, he takes on that tough kick and it sticks. He takes on the tackler and he breaks through.
You know what it kind of is? I think players that try to be super explosive and really powerful and always trying to be that kind of player, it's really hard to match that with composed decision making. And I think Petrarca just manages that balance perfectly. He just bursts through the pack running at 100 meters a second and finds a little perfect chip kick between two defenders.
Always pops up with a goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always kicks a goal or two.
Yeah.
I'll move on to my number 4. I had Joe Danaher. Again, yes, it was against the North backline. They absolutely dominated that North backline. But 5 goals, 20 disposals. I love how he played up the ground. He put on the wing for quite a large period of the game. Actually on the wing, not just moving up the ground. He set up Hipwood for a few goals. He was really influential with his ground kicking. Hasn't had an awesome start to the year, and when Brisbane really needed it, I feel like he stood up. Yes, it's against North Melbourne, but you do still have to do the job, and I was really impressed with what he did. I can't remember the stat, but it was 9 marks inside 50, and I don't think we see those numbers very often, so I was impressed.
Huge game. Number 4, I had the new Brownlow medal favourite, or tied Brownlow medal favourite, Isaac Heaney.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, we almost get used to it now. It's 5 games into the season for the Swans, but 2 goals, 27, going at 92% with most of his possessions contested to go at that sort of efficiency. As you say, Danaher's performance against North means a little less. Probably the same with Heaney against West Coast, but he's just so clean and doing everything well at the moment. And I think he earned that spot. I reckon that's another 3 votes.
Well, I'll jump straight into one. I had Heaney at number 3. Obviously, 92%. It feels like I had a look. I remember I was watching the game and I realised he was in the middle and suddenly the ball's at the back and he's kicking a goal. Pops up with 2 goals. When he's resting, he's still one of the most lethal forwards in the competition.
Yeah. He's made the All-Australian team as a small forward. Is definitely a favourite to make the All-Australian team as a midfielder if this keeps up and he actually plays in the midfield for the entire season. Yeah, I won't really explain too much. I had him in as my number 3. At number 3, I had Shea Bolton. For Richmond, he's just when he's on, he just is really, really special, and his goals are always impressive. He doesn't kick a lot of easy goals, I feel. So he was electric and was a huge reason that they got out to that big lead against St Kilda with his 2 goals in the first quarter and just creating everything for the Richmond attack. Dusty Martin was also big, and it was really cool to see Dustin Martin and Shea Bolton both sort of somewhere close to top form at the same time. There's been a lot of injury for Dusty over the last couple of years, so that was great to see. But Richmond blew it in the second half, but Bolton was huge.
I think the only thing Bolton lacks is consistency.
Yeah.
If he could pull out even half the performance that he did today on a consistent basis, we'd be talking about probably one of the best players in the competition, except we don't see it as often as we'd probably like to. As often as Richmond would definitely like to see it. I'll move into my number 2, though, is Connor Rozee. Massive for my Supercoach. 3 goals, 36 disposals. He took the game away from Essendon in the second quarter, and for a quiet Butters game, for Butters standards, he really led that Port midfield. And got in front of the Essendon edge. He felt like it was an absolute ball magnet in that game. Everything went through him. I don't know how many clearances. I know he would have had quite a few clearances in that game. He could have probably kicked 4 or 5 goals as well. Is an elite field kick. He's a good tackle. Just absolutely loved his game.
I had him at number 1.
Fair enough.
I think he was the best player of the round. To kick 3 goals and have 35 or whatever it was, it looks pretty good on the stat sheet, but he really embarrassed the Essendon midfield. It's been an issue for just 3 years now that every now and again they say, oh yeah, we're going to be tough in there and that's going to be our identity, but it just happens regularly that they let midfielders get so loose and there's just too much space without enough energy and tackling, and Rozee really exploited that and just took them apart.
Yeah, well, if you're going to play against Port, there are 2 guys who you can't let get on top of you. Butters and Rozee.
We saw in the back half of last year when teams started to put an extra number at the stoppage, tag either Zach Butters or Connor Rozee. Port really started to fall down the ladder or lose games after their big win streak and ended up going out in straight sets in the finals. That's something you have to neutralise against Port.
Yeah, and they did not get the edge in that game, did Essendon. My number 1, who I assume is your number 2, is Liberatore. I just want to go back to a text that you sent me, and I need to find it. Yeah, so the text, he said, I didn't see the whole of the Bulldogs game, but apparently Libba's game was one of the best midfield performances ever. 28 contested possessions and 19 clearances doesn't seem real to me. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. It did not seem real to me. I know they did lose the game. Obviously, 10 score involvements, he popped up with a goal, 35 disposals, but it just feels like when the ball is stuck in the contest, it just pops out with him over and over and over again. And he's a guy that every team would dream about having. Bontempelli must absolutely love playing with him because he does the dirty work, doesn't always get the credit. And when he has a game like this, yes, they didn't win, but it goes a long way to them usually winning these sorts of games.
Came up against a very strong Geelong team that's firing on all cylinders. Yeah, I went back and got to watch a lot of the game afterwards, and yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And feeling a little bit sorry that I didn't have him at number 1 because it was a ridiculous
I think if they'd won the game, potentially number 1.
Who gets 28 contested possessions?
28 contested possessions. Yeah. That's fair. It does not seem real to me.
He's a dog.
He is a dog. We'll move on to the next segment of this podcast. You guys liked the quiz last week, and I've got another quiz this week.
Hopefully easier.
I think it is easier. So we've got the top 5 Brownlow medal career votes of active players.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, we've narrowed it. We've got a top 5.
I'm trying to get the 18 teams in front of me to make it easier.
I have the top 10 here, just to let you know if you're close. But I've got the top 5 is what we're looking for.
I feel pretty comfortable
in this. Active players, I think you can do this pretty quickly.
Scott Pendlebury.
Scott Pendlebury's number 2, 221 votes.
Patrick Dangerfield.
Patrick Dangerfield's number 1, 248 votes.
Okay, injury potentially, but I'm going to say Nat Fyfe.
Nat Fyfe's number 4, 187 votes. This
is a good one. This is a good one because it's a bit easier. Okay, the guys that are going through... I want to get this 5 from 5. The guys that are going through my head right now are Trav Boak, Clayton Oliver. For my next guess, I'll go Tom Mitchell.
Tom Mitchell's number 9.
Okay.
At 135 votes.
Okay. Dusty's also not a bad shout. I'll go Dustin Martin.
Number 3, 212 votes.
Very good. Okay.
You're just missing number 5 here.
Okay. Ooh, Rory Sloane has just come into my head. I'm going to go Rory Sloane.
Rory Sloane's not in the top 10.
Oh, you gave me eyebrows. Oh, Lachie Neale exists. Okay, Lachie Neale.
Lachie Neale is number 5.
Okay, good.
187 votes.
Did the other guys I named, were Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca in the top 10?
Both not in the top 10.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you the rest of the top 10. You did name one other one. Travis Boak.
Yeah.
It was number 6 at 174 votes. Marcus Bontempelli, 169 votes. Patrick Cripps, number 8 at 141 votes. And Tom Mitchell, number 9. And Zach Merritt at number 10 with 128 votes.
Okay, I like those quizzes better where it's not who are the top 10
It's
highest paid players.
Yeah, front end, back end
Ben
contracts.
Mackay,
yeah, we'll
1.
bring more quizzes like that in the weeks to come. But yeah,
Nice,
impressive.
nice.
What did you get that in 6?
Something like that.
6,
We'll take it.
Move on to the next segment, hits and misses. You know what it is. 2 hits, 2 misses each.
From the round.
I
can start us off.
You want to start us off? All right, go on.
Sorry to steal your thunder. Okay, my first miss was a very recent miss, time-wise.
Mm-hmm.
You know who missed? Connor McDonald. From 30 metres out straight in front.
Also missed?
All the time in the world.
Australia missed.
Australia
missed.
Yeah. Connor McDonald playing for Australia there. 30 metres out all the time in the world, straight in front.
He did everything right.
Squared up.
He didn't panic and
Took
go around
his
the
time.
corner. He ran. He bursted from the stoppage, straightened up 30 metres in front, and he missed.
What was left? 2 minutes, a minute 30, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. Devastating for Connor to... Hawthorn have had a really, just low... their start to the season would be terrible for morale because they've just been torn apart in first quarters. Not today, but they've been torn apart in first quarters and then have just been sort of out of the game for the rest of the match. And so they finally had a chance to make a statement today, get some morale in the team and a win on the board. He sold.
As in, we're not talking about Hawthorn as a potential top 8, but after how they finished last year, we expected better performances than what we're seeing at the moment. And I assume that's going to be reflected in the power rankings later.
Yep.
I'll go to my first miss. So what I've done, I've got umpires missing free kicks on Jack Ginnivan. Same as last week. Last week was terrible. I think it was worse than this week. The Hawthorn actually put in a request to the AFL to a please explain.
And the AFL answered.
It was Laura Kane, is that her name?
Yeah.
She came out and she apologised. She said there were some free kicks missed. We'll try and do better. But I think there were a few free kicks again missed today. I don't know. I feel like it has to be Ginnivan now. It just has to be Ginnivan's getting a free kick. Or 50-50. I might just not give it because he might have ducked.
Yeah. I think, it's absolutely people... I think defenders are realising that they're not going to pay free kicks to Ginnivan and they're just clotheslining.
I remember, did you see one with Maynard? There was just took his head off.
At the same time, we do know Ginnivan sort of did this to himself. A lot of faking, ducking.
No, I know.
Getting high contact, but through obvious ducking and playing for the contact, which is the opposite of what the AFL wants to see. They're not trying to get rid of intentional high tackles. They're trying to get rid of contact to the head, and so they don't want to do anything that encourages players to get contact to their own head. So it makes sense that they are sort of sending the message don't be the boy that cried wolf that is always ducking your head.
I think it's going on a bit now. Though.
It's been too long now. They need to just pay the correct calls.
Were you listening to the commentators in that game?
I was more listening to my uncle, who's a Collingwood fan, complaining about how Collingwood are terrible.
Every free kick that should have gone Ginnivan's way and didn't, the umpire's like, oh, there's another one, another free kick. Anyways, a little bit disappointing. It's happened the second week in a row, and I assume Hawthorn are probably going to put in another please explain, and we're going to go through another process. But I'll move on to my second miss, and then you can have a go. North Melbourne are incapable of dealing with a good forward line, mainly tall forwards.
Yeah.
They put a test with Charlie Comben. I assume he's going to be a permanent.
Who was amazing.
He was incredible.
It was amazing.
I think he's going to be a permanent down back in a terrible back line.
He looked good in every way.
I just want to give you in the last 2 games. Danaher, 5 goals, 4. 9 shots a goal. Hipwood, been awful to start the season. 3 goals, 2. I think he had 4 or 5 marks inside 50. The week before, Mackay, 5 goals, 1. Mm-hmm. Curnow, 4 goals, 1.
Yep.
They are being absolutely destroyed by tall forwards.
They don't have a key back.
They don't have a key back.
Yeah, and that's just the reality for them.
As in, I thought Toby Pink was all right, got dropped.
It's unfortunate because I'd say around the ground, they have exciting talent everywhere. And I say exciting as opposed to, not currently top echelon, except they have exciting talent everywhere. You look at that midfield, young LDU, McKercher, Wardlaw, who's a real candidate for Rising Star as well.
Cherry's bit of a breakout season.
Absolutely. And then even guys like Bailey Scott, obviously Harry Sheasel, Nick Larkey up forward, Paul Curtis is exciting. Players everywhere that are really exciting. they just don't have a key back, and so they're not going to be competitive in games in that situation.
Especially against teams that have an elite set of key forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie Compton dominated in the second half.
He was incredible. He'll definitely start down back in the next game.
Yeah. I'll go to my second miss, which was St Kilda's first half. It's weird giving them a miss when they won the game.
What was it? A minute left to go till half time and they kicked their first goal?
Yeah. But, St Kilda seemed to have offensive troubles at times. Like, we know that Ross Lyon, when you have a Ross Lyon team, it doesn't matter who the personnel are, he's going to play such a solid system that they're going to be a good defensive team. That's just a given. But they need, they want to be a team that can compete for top 4 and can compete for a premiership. They've been, for a few years now, a team around the top 8. If I was a St Kilda fan, I'd be bored of it. I'd want to be competing now. They're in that sort of cycle where a lot of their good players are in prime age. They want to be competing, and they can't do that if they're this inconsistent in their forward line and with their attack.
You know what it is? From what I saw of the game, their build-up, for some reason, like the complete opposite of the first few weeks, has been incredibly slow. As in, they've got elite halfbacks. Bonner is a good player. Sinclair is an All-Australian. Wangani Malira is a future All-Australian. And they're not moving the ball quickly. As in, just from ice, especially in the Richmond game today. Maybe Richmond put on a lot of pressure, yes, similar to what they did against the Swans last week. But they're not finding Max King, who's been an elite forward so far in the first few games of the season.
And you would have noticed that today. I
would have noticed that. It was very disappointing.
Max King, a mega pod in his Supercoach team.
He did turn out all right.
Yeah.
But still, they have a good forward line. Membry and King and Butler's good up there. But yeah, just their ball movement seems really slow for the players that they have.
Yep, fair enough. Give me your first hit.
My first hit is Carlton's ability to come home strong and win close games. I feel like it's another win by less than 10 points. And we've seen, I think there's some stat like the last 10 wins or something, 9 of them have been by less than 10 points.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So they do pretty well in tight games.
Yeah, so their ability to come home.
It's a hit. We're on hits now. Good.
Oh, I was confused with your eyes.
Yeah.
So they did it again. They were down, and they kicked a goal. Then Freo gave away a free kick. They kicked another goal. Very disappointing end.
You saw the descent free kick from Jordan Clark, right? Did you see the ex-AFL umpire's tweet?
No.
I forget his name. It might be Michael Pell. He's an ex-AFL umpire. I've had hundreds of games, I think. He tweeted something along the lines of, the whole irony with this Jordan Clark situation is in some COVID practice game, I told him that when Jordan Clark was being a spoilt brat and carrying on, I told him that he's got to fix it up, and clearly his behaviour hasn't changed. Stinky mentality or something like that. Had an absolute crack at him.
Jeez.
And yeah, so this was like a heavy tweet from some ex-AFL umpire. So I'm sure after a situation like that, I don't know anything about Jordan Clark in terms of his personality, but if that is the case, that would snap him into shape. But that's a heavy tweet.
That's quite fun. I didn't see that at all.
Yeah. I'll show you it after this.
I mean, the best teams win the close games, and we're seeing Carlton just being able to generate wins in these tight games. So yeah, that's my first hit.
Absolutely. My first hit is the Brownlow medal charge of Isaac Heaney.
I like it.
We've seen the final evolution of Heens, and yeah, he's just like, you can't really imagine a game right now where he isn't in competition for votes. Every game so far, he probably has votes.
I think he definitely. There's one game. It was the
last week.
Yeah, where he potentially gets one vote
because we lost, but he was the best player for the Swans for sure. But he is.
Has he been in our top 5s every week?
I think he's been in one. No, he wasn't in the top 5 last week, but every other week I think he was in the top 5 for both of us, or at least one of us. He has every reason to bring the Brownlow now. The only person in his way.
Go on.
Have a guess.
Rao?
Incorrect. John Longmire.
Oh, right. Because I was thinking, right, Tom Green is not getting votes today. He didn't have an outstanding performance. He's not getting anything. Rao's not. I don't think Rao's not getting votes.
Yeah, but Tom Green, come the end of the season, he'd be the.
Yeah,
other
no,
favourite.
I understand, but he at the moment has a little bit of a lead in the Brownlow, just from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
I'll go to my second hit. My hit, it's a bit the polar opposite of what we've seen from them the past few weeks. West Coast, specifically Harley Reid.
Oh yeah.
I know you sent me a text. Jeez, you sent me a lot of text. But you said out of McKercher, Reid, and who was the last one?
Sanders,
McKercher was going to be the best player.
I still think that.
I would like to bring up Harley Reid to challenge that. From what we saw, And people said from his youth, he's the second coming of Dustin Martin. He loves a fend. And he loves breaking tackles. He broke like 8 tackles.
Good at it.
He's really good at footy. But yeah, just on West Coast in general, it looks like they've got some improvement for the first time, especially in the middle of the ground. They're lacking good forwards. They don't. I mean, with Oscar Allen out and you've got Waterman as your key forward, it's not ideal. Or Darling is your key forward. He's not a great mover. Not ideal. But
Darling wouldn't be playing for any team other than the West Coast right now.
And I don't think he plays if Oscar Allen's fit.
Yeah.
But there was some improvement. Yes, they lost. They were winning at half-time against a good Swans team. They played awfully in that first half. But still, they were in the lead. There are some positives coming out of that game for West Coast. Harley Reid looks awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a huge fan of him. Imagine when he's like 23, 24.
I think
buffs up a little bit, gets a bit more experience. Broke 8 tackles in that game. 8 tackles against a Swans midfield who don't miss a lot of tackles.
Yeah, great tackling team.
But yeah, I was really impressed with West Coast.
I want to just justify my McKercher point in saying the point of that is that all 3 of them are great. We've got like you've got like a 2003 NBA draft class here, which your eyes are blank right now, but it's the LeBron James draft class, Dwayne Wade, and a lot of superstars, legends of the game came from one draft class. We might be seeing that with Sanders, McKercher, and Harley Reid, where they are all immediately having an impact as one of the better midfielders on their team, just in their first season coming straight in. So it's really impressive to see, and I just think, in contrast to your Harley Reid point, I think
we'll see how it develops. He had a few quiet games before that, and he had a little bit of a breakout game against the Swans. We'll see what happens in the next few games.
Yeah, I'll give you my second hit, which is the competition around the league. I think
I like it.
Maybe it naturally comes from having 3 teams at the bottom that are quite uncompetitive. I know we saw Hawthorn and West Coast both be competitive this week, except competitive in terms of actually having a capacity to win more than a couple games this year. But with Hawthorn, North and West Coast, I think naturally that's caused at the top end of the league, you have 7, like in 7th place, you have Freo who are 3 from 4. Make their first slip up this week to Carlton by 10 points, who are undefeated. Yeah. And they're in 7th place. So there is seriously good competition around the league. It's going to be very, very difficult to get a top 8 spot. Might need something like 14 wins this year or something super high to make the top 8. And I'm loving seeing it. I think every single team's got to be at their best you can't drop off for a few weeks and hope to make the 8. They're going to have to be on.
I like it as like a neutral watching any game. Most of the time you're going to get a pretty good game of footy.
Yeah. And that's 7 teams on 3 from 4 or better, and none of those 7 were in the grand final last year. So Brisbane and Collingwood both outside of that. So it's going to be very difficult for those 2 teams to go and build back up to make it into the 8.
I like it. We'll move on to our next segment, the Footy Pyramid. There has been some drastic changes in the Footy Pyramid. We have players dropping everywhere. But we'll get straight in. On the fringes, Sam Taylor still did not impress too much in that game. Too much to make our top 15.
I'm just going to write a collection of complaints to raise at the end.
You have to be elite of the elite to be in my pyramid. Sam Taylor is not quite... He's on the fringes.
Wait, can I just talk about it now?
No. Tom Liberatore is on the fringes. And Toby Green, after being dropped, is on the fringes as well. Okay, we have outs. 2 outs from the top 15. Clayton Oliver is an out.
Okay.
He was in the 3rd tier. He has dropped not 1 tier, not 2 tiers, but 3 tiers. He is out. Clayton Oliver has not impressed me at the start of the season.
You're saying this is kind of like the Dance Moms pyramid, but continue.
Luke Jackson is out. He's had he had a decent game, but I think there are other players that have impressed me a little bit more to be in that probably 13th to 15th spot in the pyramid.
Okay.
5th tier. Keeping their spot in the 5th tier. Errol Goulden.
Good.
Zach Butters.
Good.
And Tom Stewart.
Good. I can guess one of the ins.
There are 2 new players into the pyramid. Go on.
Connor Rosie.
Connor Rosie is a new in. And who is the other in? There is one more player.
Give me 1 second.
That has entered the top 15 of the competition.
Okay, I know. It'll be I'm going to go... You've put Jeremy Cameron.
I've not put Jeremy
Shea
Cameron.
Bolton.
I've not put Shea Bolton. You've got to have a couple good games in a row to be in my top 15.
Give it to me.
Zach Merritt has entered my top 15 in the competition. Fair. has had an elite few games with a terrible Essendon side.
Heavy.
And he deserves it.
2-2.
He has now entered the 5th tier. The 4th tier, dropping down. Tom Green has now dropped down to the 4th tier.
Okay.
Alongside him, keeping their places in the 4th tier, is Paddy Cripps, Sarong and Kerno, now in the 4th tier. In the 3rd tier, holding his place after a slow start to the game, Nick Dacos. I feel like he did enough in that game to hold his spot.
Okay.
Lockie Neal has risen from the 5th tier.
Lockie Neal's so good.
He's taken Clayton Oliver's spot in that 3rd tier, and he's moved up 2 spots.
Can I say something about Lockie Neal?
Go on.
I reckon he got 3 Brownlow votes and he was subbed off at 3/4 time.
That was one of the best 3/4 I think I've seen from a footy player.
I'm trying to imagine I'm the umpire and I'm thinking the game was probably over at 3/4 time. Lockie Neal was by so far the best player in those 3/4. I'm giving him the 3 votes.
So yeah, I would like to put an apology out to Lockie Neal for dropping him when he was injured and during the bye out of my... I know Ruth is over here.
He lost to the bye.
He lost to the bye. He lost to injury as well. But he's back. He was in the 5th tier last week. He's now in the 3rd tier and climbing. Climbing 1 tier as well is Max Gawn. Max Gawn is now in the 3rd tier. The top 3 stay the same. In the 2nd tier, Heaney again, alongside Bont, who had 2 elite games. But my number 1, keeping his spot, continuing with elite performances, is Christian Petrarca.
Very good.
It is going to be tough to overtake him because I feel like the bloke just puts in an 8 to 9 out of 10 every single week, minimum. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. That's my pyramid. It's right in front of you, just sitting on the table here. Let me know what you have to think.
I'm raising my 2 comments.
Your 2 comments can be raised now.
Sam Taylor is the best defender in the competition. You don't have a single defender in your pyramid.
Tom Stewart.
You have him in there?
Yeah, he's in the 5th tier.
Okay. Sam Taylor should be there.
That's okay.
He's the best defender in the competition, and this is blasphemy.
Okay.
2nd point.
Yes.
I'd have Bont at the top, but I can't knock Petrarca there.
That's okay. You know what? If Bont was at the top last week, he would have stayed at the top.
Yeah, okay.
It's just the fact that Bont had a quiet game. He kicked 3 goals
I like it.
in that West Coast game, but he didn't do enough to get to the top, and he hasn't done more than what Petrarca did.
I like it. Bit of consistency. Let Track hold on to it.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's now Track's pyramid. I like it.
Now we'll move on to the power rankings. Starting us off in 18th is the West Coast Eagles. Not much to be said. There's not much to explain. I'm going to rush through. We've got a change. I had Hawthorn in 17th and North in 16th. Those 2 have switched around because Hawthorn impressed. North got battered again. Hawthorn impressed against Collingwood.
I feel like if Hawthorn just have a good first quarter, we could pick up a win there.
Yeah, I said I was with my cousins who are big Collingwood fans to watch the game, and as my uncle raised the point, I said it's a close game. He said, does that say more about Collingwood or Hawthorn? I guess that's the question, which we'll find out about throughout the next few weeks. Except Hawthorn, that's a good performance where they could have won the game from a better kick from number 31.
West Coast play Richmond next week, so they probably have the first chance out of the bottom 3 to get a win.
I don't
North
think
play Geelong and Hawthorn play Gold Coast.
I don't think West Coast have a chance in that game, but we'll see. I don't know.
Of the 3 teams, they have the best chance.
Yeah, okay. In number 15, we've got Adelaide who stay there. Not much to be said. 0-4. I guess we haven't mentioned them this week, but it's dire. A lot of people were expecting them to be a big jumper somewhere deep in the top 8 this year.
As in, I think that score flattered them.
Yeah,
in that game, Melbourne kicked 5 behinds in the last quarter and sort of fell off a little bit. Then Adelaide scored some garbage time goals once again.
If I remember correctly, in our ladder predictions in the preseason, you had Adelaide at number 5 or 6.
Did I?
Or one of us did, and I thought that was a reasonable prediction at the start of the year.
I'll do the research.
But there's Adelaide. They're 0-4. It's dire. In 14, I have Essendon moving down 1 spot.
Okay.
The Essendon Edge is a sham. They're only in 14 because there's 4 teams that haven't won a game. But Essendon, they clearly just don't have what it takes. In 13th, I've got up 1 spot Richmond, who despite a loss have now had a great win against Sydney and then a really competitive game against St Kilda where they dropped off in the second half.
I had Adelaide in 6th. So yeah.
Yeah, to start the year. Good memory from Curtez. In 13th, in 12th.
To be fair, I had Brisbane 1 and Collingwood 2.
In 12th, we've got the Brisbane Lions. Finally a win. Hurrah. Well done, Brisbane. In number 11, we've got...
Just keeping their place? I guess they beat North.
Yeah, you don't learn much about a team from a win against North. In number 11, we've got Collingwood.
winning and going down.
Yes.
Wow.
Who go down one spot despite a win.
Does that mean the team below them is going to lose and go up?
Okay, so we had Collingwood in 11. With them in 11th place, you would have expected them to beat Hawthorn by 30-40. Them winning in a game like that, which they easily could have lost, had some luck knock on their way. Ginnivan free kicks, the Connor McDonald goal. They could have easily lost that game. They're lucky to be in 11th, really.
Fair enough.
Collingwood are not playing good footy. They have that talent all over the ground. Tom Mitchell and Jordan De Goey were both great today inside, but they're not playing good system footy, and Craig McRae has a lot of work to do. In number 10, but before we move on, the hangover's real. These two sides here, 11th and 12th, the grand finals. Number 10, we have Bulldogs going up one spot with a loss.
We're impressive.
We're impressive. Geelong look great. Geelong are a well-rounded, good team, and Bulldogs put up a good fight, could have easily won that game. They'll be one of those teams scrapping for the top 8.
It's also tough because the Dogs had the home ground advantage.
Yep, absolutely. At Norwood Oval, or where was it? Adelaide Oval. Mm. Okay, in number 9, we've got keeping their spot, Gold Coast. In the same way that you say you don't learn much about a team when they beat North or West Coast, you don't learn much about a team when they lose to GWS.
It's just, you don't really care about that game on the calendar.
No, that's not quite the case, because Gold Coast would have absolutely backed themselves, and it was a very close game until halfway through the fourth quarter. Gold Coast midfield was great. Loved Flanders on the half-back line, and Rowell was, again, a lead inside. But GWS were too good in the end, and I think it's fair to give Gold Coast, let them keep their spot. In number 8, I've got St Kilda keeping their spot as well.
Not a lot of change this week.
I think what we're starting to see is the power rankings. We've seen some really heavy changes. Brisbane dropping 6 spots last week, and that's all happened up until last week. I think we may start to figure out where teams are sitting. I expect maybe Brisbane and Collingwood to slowly climb.
Yeah.
Maybe Brisbane more than Collingwood. I'm really doubting how Collingwood are playing. But I think teams are starting to settle into where they sit, and we're starting to see what teams actually look like. Like Adelaide really look like a bottom 4 team now. Wow. They're not losing a lot of close games. They put up a decent fight against Melbourne, except it was Thursday night on Gather Round at Adelaide Oval.
I know.
It was set up for them to win.
Crowds behind you.
Absolutely. Now, in 7th spot, we've got, moving down 1 spot, is Freo with their first loss of the year.
They should have won that game. As
we touched on, a great game against Carlton. Both teams have been super impressive this year, so I think hats off to both teams. It was a high-quality game, one of the more high-quality games this round. And Fremantle, they've shown us so much this year, and I think they're a team that'll push hard for a top 4 spot even. They look great. They're so well set up defensively, and their midfield's strong. In number 6, going up 1 spot, is Port. They've won every game apart from a really tight loss to Melbourne, who are looking like a top 4 side. So Port have shown us so much, but there's a lot of strong teams, and it's going to be tough to get up higher than 6th in the power rankings. In number 5, I've got keeping their spot Geelong, undefeated but can't make the top 4 in the power rankings.
Wow, I would have potentially had them above one team who you're going to mention in a second.
I'm going to mention in a second. I think they haven't yet beaten an elite side. They haven't yet had a huge win. In contrast to that, in 4th place, I have the Sydney Swans, who had, I guess, in hindsight, it's not such a powerful win against Collingwood, but I guess first game of the season, we didn't know that yet against Collingwood, but then, for round 1 of the season, round 0 against Melbourne, though, we know how looking at how Melbourne look now, a dominant win by 40-odd against Melbourne is absolutely huge. And Swans haven't been at their best the last couple of weeks with a tight loss to Richmond and not being as dominant as they would have wanted to be against West Coast. However, I still think when it comes down to it, like this isn't purely on form. It's based on where we think this teams are going to perform in the future, and I think Swans will bounce back.
Are they going to be hurt by the bye in your power rankings?
I think this is an absolutely amazing time for the bye for the Swans. Maybe in the power rankings, if Geelong are 6-0, it's hard not to put them in the top 4. So they might be hurt in the power rankings, but I think this is an incredible time for Swans to have a bye after 2 games where they've not been at their best. In number 3, I have Melbourne going up a spot. They look great. Not a whole lot to say. They look like a top 4 side.
I think the key is here, if you can nullify Max Gawn, you have a shot at Melbourne. If you can't, forget it. Because that's what the Swans did.
Only one man has been able to nullify Max Gawn.
One man, and he just doesn't seem to be nullifying anybody else. But that's okay. We'll just continue.
Now, Brody Grundy has been good. I'm not going to let you get away with that.
He hasn't been great from what we saw in round 0.
Yeah, I think he's been good the last couple of weeks, but compared to round 0, not quite as elite. In number 2, I've also going up a spot, Carlton.
Okay, that's fair enough.
As you say, the mettle of a premiership side. We saw it with Collingwood last year. They pull out the tough wins. Collingwood, on the advanced stats, weren't the most dominant team in last year. That was Brisbane. They weren't the team that had the most beautiful transition. That was the Swans at points and Adelaide at points. But they got across the line in the tight games, and that seems to be the team we're seeing in Carlton. In number 1, keeping their spot is GWS, and it's going to take a team to put together an almighty performance to knock them off at the moment. And you know what we've got in 3 weeks' time? I think 3 weeks' time.
I'll have a look for you.
We've got Swans versus GWS, Battle of the Bridge at the SCG.
4 weeks. It's in 3 games for the Swans because it's a bye, but they play in round 8.
I have that game marked on my calendar to be an absolute classic. I think Swans win by 6 goals, but nonetheless, that'll be a classic. There's the power rankings. Please comment below what you think, what you'd change. Adelaide fans, you're not allowed to say anything. Stay quiet in the comments, please.
We'll move on to our last bit of the podcast. Just again, Supercoach, little chat about Supercoach. Yeah, the rounds stats have just updated for the week. You had a really good round.
Top 3%.
Top 3%.
Score of 2,335.
And funnily enough, I'm actually beating Sam by 1 point overall. Well, we're both ranked in the top 12%, which is decent, but we'd like to see us improving to the top 10% in the next couple of weeks, maybe top 5% as well.
I'll mention a couple of key points from my team this round. Just having had a blinder. So you've had the good rounds the last couple of weeks. So now it's my time to say what went well for me. Nick Blakey, the highest scoring back out of the top 10% of players. I think he's 1% owned. Had him in the team. So finally, picking a bit of an out there pod has worked out for me. Holding on to Hayden Young and Nick Martin. Back-to-back weeks, Hayden Young's scored about 120 something and then 119. Nick Martin's gone 136, 133. Nick Martin, I would argue, hasn't even played the best that we could have seen from him in the last couple of weeks, except his role on that half-back line. They just give him so much ball. He gets a lot of effective kicks, and he's amazing for Supercoach there. The bump was huge, but everyone has him, really. Traded in both Ollie Dempsey and Sam Darcy, and changed that in the middle of the round.
I did as well, lad.
Did you have them on field, or one of them
I
on
didn't
field?
have Darcy on field.
Okay. Did you have someone on field who's worse?
I had Powell and King.
Okay, but they both got 70 plus, so it's not a big issue.
It wasn't terrible, but I was happy to have them both because their cash gens went crazy this round.
But with a guy like Ollie Dempsey, it's a situation where you've already missed out on 60k of cash gen, and you can think, I've just missed out on this. I just want to, bet against the people that have him, which is, I think, a fair point some of the time where you're sort of just behind it. However, Ollie Dempsey, his role just looks so good coming up the ground. He's going to kick a goal or two every game, and he's going to get around 20 disposals a game because he comes up the ground, plays midfield up some of the time, and is really good when he has the ball. He's been one of the breakout players in the league this year, I'd say, with how Geelong are performing.
Well, I mean, my one massive miss of the season so far has been LDU.
Yeah.
He's now 560k with a break even of 167. And he's just not scoring well at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's a Tom Green instead of LDU, which could have been that at the start of the year, could have pushed my ranking up a lot. But I think I'm just gonna have to stick now.
Yep.
I've committed to him. There was a part of me that was going to change to Tom Green. A big part of me that was going to change to Tom Green in this most recent round. But I've decided we're just going to commit to it.
Yeah.
We're committing to LDU. His scores have to turn around at some point. I think he was one of the best scorers last year. So yeah, that could be the make or break of my season if he starts performing.
I think one of the really interesting parts of this season in particular with Supercoach is the lack of premium forwards that you can lock in and say, this is a guy who'll average even 100 plus. You probably have Sam Flanders, Isaac Heaney, and I want to say Luke Jackson, except when Sean Darcy comes back, there are question marks.
He's tough. Even Heaney, there's a potential...
I don't think there's a question mark.
You don't reckon? Potential question mark We won't know until the players come back.
He's been the best player in the league this year. John Longmire won't change that now.
I hope not.
This is very, very, very different to previous Isaac Heaney seasons where he's had some flashes in the middle and then people say, oh, we want to keep him there. This is different. He's been the best midfielder in the league. He'll stay. We've seen Taylor Adams back and he'll play sort of half of his time in the forward, half of his time in the midfield, maybe even more time in the forward line. I think all that'll affect is it'll get rid of some of the midfield time that we've seen from guys like McInerney. We'll see a bit more wing time from Goulden, and a bit more forward time from Rowbottom, but I don't think it affects Heaney.
That's fair enough. Disappointing in Blake Howes, who just doesn't seem to have the role that he may have had in the first couple rounds of the year. And defenders having injuries.
Wait, who was that? You said Blake Howes?
Blake Howes. And defenders having injuries. So no cash in from Zach Reid. I currently have Zach Reid and Caulfield. So very difficult. I had Gibkiss as well. So it's been a tough start for Cash Jam. But yeah, I'm happy with the season. You can still join our league and keep your points.
Absolutely. It's not a head-to-head league. So.
Join the league. We've moved up in our league now, thank God.
Yep. I think we're in 3rd and 4th, but we're 10 points off 1st and 2nd.
We are, yeah. I'm 11 points off. You're 12 points off.
Yep.
1st and 2nd are tied.
Yep. And what's that score?
8-2-7-9.
Okay.
So yeah, we're really close to 1st and 2nd in our league. You can join. Your points will be transferred across. We'd love to see you there because just another ranking we can move up. But yeah, thanks for watching the podcast this week and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.